Hey guys, it's Austin with Forward Controls, and today we're going to be talking about a new safety. This is not going to be a super safety. You actually would not know externally that this was different than any ASF. What we're actually doing is calling this Command Actuation, right? So it's ASF with a Command Actuation variant. Basically what it means is that we've made some modifications to the profile and the actual feel that actually might make it a little difficult for us to demonstrate it for you guys visually here. I have some learning aids that I set up, but I'm gonna try my best to first demonstrate it on the actual product itself with this overhead view. And like I said, you know, there's really no way to externally visually notice what this is in terms of it being different than our standard ASF, but maybe I can demonstrate it for you guys like this. So there is actually almost like an inverted amount of tension versus what a normal safety feels like, where there's a detent on, you know, both far ends of the throw, and then you kind of have to push it all the way through in order to get it to the other detent, or, you know, pull it back to get to the safe position. What this is this is actually under a certain degree of spring tension. And I'm trying to demonstrate it, kind of like flicking it like a lighter here. What you can see is that because I'm not going past the halfway point, it's actually getting returned to the safe position. And that's happening because of the spring tension that comes from the detent spring. Now what happens is once I actually get past, and this might be again kind of hard to demonstrate visually, once I break past 46 degrees where that peak is, it actually takes over and it moves it to the fire position, right? Or the semi position in this case. So, you know, what is the benefits here, and why did I cut up a box of coffee creamer? Well, again, this is something that if it was kind of difficult for you to understand just from watching the visuals, what I did was I cut up a box of coffee that I get from HEB, which I'm enjoying right now, and this is just going to be a visual representation of what it feels like to actuate your safety. I think if I give you a compare and contrast, it's going to make a lot of sense. So on this box here, right, this is essentially the throw of like a normal mil-spec safety, where there's two little detents in here that I've kind of, you know, cut in place, these little divots, and a little track for the ball to ride along. And what happens is that, you know, there's always going to be a certain amount of tension that this ball is under. In this case, we're representing that with gravity. And it's going to become, you know, you have to apply some sort of pressure past a certain point in order to get it out of that little groove and move it along the track. Now, as you'll notice, I could kind of stop this along any sort of point along the track, and it's generally going to stay in place. I get that this is kind of rolling because this isn't a perfect example, but, you know, eventually it's going to, you know, if I apply enough pressure, get to the other detent, right? And this is what your safety feels like, right? So you're just pushing it all the way from one end to the other as it falls into any type of detent. Now, all safeties work this way. You know, the 90 degrees, the 50 degrees, you know, the 45 degrees of other manufacturers. The only thing that kind of makes those different is this length and how much it goes around the radius of that center cylinder of your safety, right? And then, of course, how it disengages, you know, the ability for the trigger to actuate is also part of that. But as far as the actual feel, like what it feels like, where the detents click into place, this is what it looks like. So what is Command Actuation? Well, Command Actuation actually can be represented really well by this mountain peak. And what it does is there's always a little bit of tension, again, and we're using gravity to symbolize it here, but it's the spring of your detent. And no matter how much I push on this ball, I'm never pushing it out of like a little groove like I was with our traditional mil-spec safety, right? So it's always, no matter how far I go up this, if I don't get past that peak or that center point, it's going to return to, in this case, it would be the safe position, right? But then something interesting happens, which is that as I break that middle point, gravity takes over, or the spring of your detent takes over, and it sends it home, sends it to the other position. So what this does is it's kind of a 50 degree safety or 46 degree safety in disguise as a 90 degree safety. So I only had to apply, again, 46 degrees of rotation to this before the spring takes over. So one great use case for this is that if you are in some type of role or requirement in which you have to have a 90 degree safety, and you can't have any type of, modified or reduced throw safety, but you still want kind of that like speed and that feeling, or maybe you're used to with your normal training guns to a 50-degree throw. This would be a great option for that. I know a lot of departments have that requirement, certain agencies have that requirement. We're not promoting, intentionally deceiving the entity that you work for if you're in a professional environment, but if that's a requirement that you have to fall within, this one actually might be worth considering. The other thing to think about is that I'm really talking to the guys that wear kit with this product because, as you guys know, if you have a rifle and you have a lot of kit on your chest, as it moves around, there's maybe a chance that your safety gets inadvertently, disengaged by your kit based on what you're doing, moving in and around vehicles or whatever it is you're doing in your day-to-day job. And I've actually seen different department policies or TTPs that have implemented ways to alleviate that risk, right? In fact, one that I know of, and I'm not going to name names because I don't know if they've moved on from this policy or not, but they actually required that if their SWAT guys were in a resting position or they didn't have positive authority over their carbine, they were just in some sort of administrative position or posture, that they actually twisted it outboard. So that way the safety was actually facing outwards and couldn't rub up on their gear. The drawback to that is that if you have an ambidextrous safety, there's really, you're going to have the possibility of it being actuated, whether it's either side of your body. So if having an ambidextrous safety or a reduced throw on the strong side is a requirement for you and you're concerned about your safety being disengaged by your kit, this is a great product for that. In fact, I actually prefer the 50-degree throws of the ASFs, and I haven't noticed really any difference in the way I use this. I've come to really enjoy this a lot more than I thought I would. I like it. I think it's a great option. Now, also to be perfectly clear, this product is not a replacement or a substitute for good firearm safety. You are still expected to adhere to the 4 firearm safety rules, whatever, safety procedures that your gun range or the department you work for or agency you work for, you're expected to adhere to those as well. This isn't a substitute for being proficient with the manual of arms of your carbine. It's just an enhancement and an augmentation to the traditional safety throw of the M4, right? So this does, we did not invent this. This does have some history. HK and then for a while there, even B&T and some other German manufacturers had safeties like this. This is a German design, right? So there were some 416s that were available in it. This has kind of gone by the wayside. I don't think this is really available too much stateside anymore. There may be some variants of the 416 or the MR556 that are available with this, or some other manufacturers that make 416 variants. You might be able to find this, but if you're wanting this functionality in your carbine, I think this is probably one of the only places you can get this. And then also have the amazing performance of the ASF levers as well. So the last thing that I did want to touch on is that there is a break-in period. It's also entirely possible that even with this model that I've had, I'm still breaking it in a little bit. What I would recommend doing is honestly installing it, putting a tiny bit of lube on the track that your detent rides in, and just doing some dry fire, right? Do some dry fire. It's probably good for you anyway. You're probably not doing enough dry fire as it is. I know I'm not doing enough dry fire as it is, but just do simple, make sure your weapon is clear. You can lock the bolt to the rear, have something taped up on the wall, and just do some basic up drills with your carbine, and you'll break that safety in over time. So again, that's something that would be very difficult for me to try and illustrate it for you guys visually. I hope me cutting up these cardboard boxes was enough to help you guys understand that. But again, this is just a variant of the ASF. If you guys want that Command Actuation, it's available now over on our websites and any dealers that have selected to carry it. So hope that answered some questions for you guys. Have a great day.